You might be wondering what I've done about the game itself. Well, not much really. One of the reasons? Stall. Yeah, stalls. That basically means that I make little or no progress over periods of measuring in months. Yes, months, and I'm actually expecting more yet to come. And them to actually happen in general. It's happened with the 2.4 version as well. But this is currently what I have for the game itself. And these warnings are mostly just referencing local variables, pretty much. I've got rid of most of those. But here you might notice how the landscape looks different. Well, it's actually intentional. It's part of one of the new features that I've added. This here marks the water line. I've made it fainter, so it's actually more realistic. In this spot, actually, there's not supposed to be any water. This is the horizon indicator. It marks exactly where the horizon is relative, or where you are relative to the background scenery. On the vertical, anyway. And in a sense, it actually marks exactly where the horizon is. But you might notice this banding effect here. Well, that's part of the problem with my current slope snapping method. The problem with the slope snapping method, well, to give you an idea, the camera faces exactly due north, toward the North Pole. Not the magnetic North Pole, the real North Pole. 90 degrees latitude. The sun is actually 135 degrees to the right, which makes it to the southeast, or putting the time of day at about morning, probably 10 a.m. or something. And the sun's actually about 45 degrees up. So in a sense the sun's going to be rising, so it's going to go a little higher than that later in the day. But the day actually does not change in here. Strange, but that's the case. But anyway, this slope here is -5. You're probably familiar with this debug panel. -5 because it's actually going like this, except not that steep. Here, just so you know, it's actually facing toward the sun just a little bit. And this causes this little banding effect here. In this area here, it's +5, so it's actually going slightly away from the sun. So the sun's hitting it less directly, so it's not as much light as getting there. So it's going to be darker. That's just basic physics. So, the problem with the slope snapping design is that because it's always multiples of 5 degrees as I have it. I actually had 7.5 originally thought of, but 5 is what I went with. But the problem with that is, well, how the angles relative to the sun can cause these abrupt changes. I have a fix for that. That fix is using a vertex-based system. But you might notice how the texture fading here. See, this area here is a full grass. But way off to the west is actually what my target is. And yes, it's a long ways over. Somewhere around... Oop, I just passed them. Nope, that's the western one. I don't want that. And yes, I'm actually after the Mebna Islands. This, if you recall from the September 30 blog update, you might recall a view like this. How you got the fading here, but you also notice that I actually got a different texture here. I used to have the rock texture, this. But I've actually got the sand texture, because at the time I didn't have it. But you can see how it goes from sand, which this area is actually underwater, to give you an idea. And over here it gradually fades into the grass. And over here the dark side, which is actually away from the sun, is where it's fading back to the sand. And you might recall from the main details document about 800 mph being a problem, and that you get no time to react. Well, in the corner here there's intended to be a mini-map to resolve that. But since I don't have that yet, you might be wondering how exactly is it? Well, I'll show you. 800 mph. Here we go. Start that rocket engine. Yes, it does take quite a bit. Okay. Now watch. Going back the other way. That was an abrupt stop. Okay. Now watch the speed. Now watch. See how fast that was going by? That's why the mini-map in here. The mini-map for that speed would actually be going about 1 pixel per frame. That's pretty slow. So it actually gives you about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds or so to react. Plenty of time to react. So you might be wondering what I'm doing now. Well, my target is way to the east. And I think I found a bug. See how the ground here is moving at a different, faster than what the rest of it is? Well, here's the western peak of Twin Peak. Yes, that's really dark here. That's the ambient light. Okay, and now for the eastern peak, which isn't that much different. So you can see how this moves differently. But now let's go over to the east further. Yes, I got a bug to fix. That's about a class 2 bug. And here you can actually see the texture appearing differently. See how it's more of a rock texture here? In this particular spot, you're actually looking at grass, rock, and snow. To give you an idea, look at the horizon indicator in the background scenery. This exactly matches this, but this here is incredibly distant. Look how slow this moves. Just to give you an idea on how big that is. Now look how fast the landscape moves. That's a huge difference. But look closely here how the landscape here changes. See how it's getting more and more toward the snow? That's the peak of Mount Mebna. So, my next target is actually Mount Sky. And if you think that speed is fast, try Insta-Teleport. Insta-Teleport is incredibly fast. So watch the texture gradually come to snow. And how it just suddenly disappeared. That just gives you a real idea on how fast things are. And that was whizzing by at 400 miles an hour. So here it's a full snow. But I want to show you something here. So you might be wondering what this is all about. Well, AlphaBlend. It is slow. Here I'm only using 3 channels just so I can actually get the basics on what the landscape, the pathway actually looks like. For 3 channels, that's about quality 750. The ground by default is actually quality 7, so it looks very nice and fine. The problem here is the fact that, well, the ground here is actually, the pathway is supposed to use something a lot higher. Quality 7 for here would actually use about 700. But the problem with that, the draws per frame, 20+ thousand. So it's going to be way out there. I mean way out there. There's no way I can do it with AlphaBlend. DirectX is my only solution. But this video and this game were both created by Ulillillia. Thank you for watching.